If plants use Tinder, Bentham and Hooker would decide who matches with whom.
Okay, so welcome back, guys, to the another video of the series. In this video, we'll be talking about Bentham and Hooker's classification system, which is a natural classification system. And in the previous video, we talked about natural versus artificial classification system differences, and we discussed in detail Linnaeus's artificial classification system, which is also referred to as sexual classification system. So in this video, we will be delving into the details of Bentham and Hooker's classification system, which is the most complete natural system ever developed on this earth, and it's a refinement of de Candolle's system. So this system is a refinement of de Candolle's classification system. Means that there were other natural classification systems like that of de Candolle and that of Digessu. So this Bentham and Hooker came after de Candolle's, and they actually modified this classification system, and then they published this classification system in a book named Genera Plantarum. Okay, from 1862 to 1883, and they published this Genera Plantarum in 3 volumes. Both these Bentham and Hooker were actually English botanists. Okay, so in the Genera Plantarum, they classified around 202 families. 202 families of 7,569 genera, with many thousands of species in them. Okay, so the descriptions of the families were based on personal studies rather than accumulation of mere known facts. That means the descriptions were based on personal studies, and this feature of personal studies made it very popular, and currently some herbaria still arrange their specimens following this system, especially the Indian herbaria system. They still follow this Bentham and Hooker's classification system. Okay, so if you look at the classification system, they classified okay, so they actually classified seed plants or spermatophytes or phanerogames. That means those plants which bear seeds, they classified them into three classes, which were dicotyledons, gymnosperms, and monocotyledons. If you look at dicotyledons, they have seeds with two cotyledons. Gymnosperms have naked seeds, and monocotyledons have one cotyledon in their seed. Okay. Further, they classified the dicotyledonous class into three subclasses, okay, which were named as polypetally, gamopetally, and monoclymedy. If you look at the word itself, polypetally, which means the members of this subclass have flowers containing free petals, while as those in the gamopetally have fused fused petals, and monoclymedy also have uniseriate perianth. While as these two, the polypetally and gamopetally, have biseriate perianth. And monocotyledons also have uniseriate perianth. Okay, well, what do we mean by uniseriate perianth actually? Let us have a look at this figure here. Okay, so if you see on the right side, biseriate. Sorry. Okay, so if you see on the right side, biseriate perianth means it's a flower which has distinct sepals and petals. The sepals and petals are distinguished, and that's why it is called biseriate. This perianth means calyx plus corolla. That means sepals and petals together are called as perianth. And when these sepals and petals are distinguished, we say that biseriate perianth, which is present in gamopetally and polypetally. Whereas in case of uniseriate perianth, the sepals and petals are not distinguished, and they are then referred to as tepals. Okay, the sepals and petals are not distinguished and are called as tepals. So this is uniseriate perianth. Okay, uniseriate, you can remember it as they behave like a single organ, while as in case of biseriate, they are like two organs, the two vertices. Okay, coming back to the classification system itself, then these classes and subclasses were then divided into families, orders, and series. Classes and subclasses were divided into series. And series, let me pull it up a bit. Series, and the series were divided into orders, which were further divided into families. These two authors, the Bentham and Hooker, referred orders as cohorts, and they called families as natural orders. Natural orders. If you look at the class monocots, they do not have any order. There is no order in monocots and no order in monoclymity. Okay, that means these class and this subclass is without any order. Whereas in case of polypetally, we have three series which are divided into orders, and in gamopetly we again have three series. Monoclymity has no order, but it has seven series. So monocotyledons also have seven series, but they are without any order. If you want to know the names of these series, I will put up a photograph in the comments or description section. You can go and have a look, but I think it's not too necessary to remember all the names of these series and orders and go into the detail. What is important is you need to remember this classification up to class and subclass level, and need to remember how many series are present in these classes and subclasses. And one of the important things about this classification is that this classification was not affected by the idea of evolution too much, because these two authors had described all the families and have placed them in correct groupings. Okay, so this was about the classification system of Bentham and Hooker's. Now we will look at its merits and demerits. First, we will look at its good news or the merits, and then we will look at its demerits. The first merit of this classification is that it's easy and has a good practical value for routine identification. Practical for routine identification. Okay, so it is because of this practicality, this classification system is still used in various herbaria like those of India's. The second advantage of this classification system is that the gymnosperms were placed in separate group. That is, gymnosperms have a separate group, which was not the case in case of decondole, who placed these gymnosperms with dicots. So this was one of the important features of this classification of Bentham and Hooker, that they separated gymnosperms from dicots. And third advantage of this classification is that the description of the families and genera is complete and precise. Description of families and genera is precise and complete. Why so? Because we already said that this classification system was more of the compilation of their own personal studies rather than just mere known facts. The fourth advantage of this classification system is that some groups have been rightly placed as acknowledged by present day authors. For example, some of the groups like Raynail's group, Hijromeri group. These groups are still acknowledged by the present day authors, which have given their classification based on phylogenetic relationships. That is what I meant when I said that this system was not much affected by the phylogenetic systems or the phylogenetic idea or the idea of evolution that we say. Despite these advantages, this classification system has some demerits to it. For example, it is not based on phylogeny. Okay, not based on phylogeny, even though the idea was already there in 1859 or something. Okay. The second demerit of this classification is, which is usually asked in exams, is that they place gymnosperms in between dicots and monocots. Gymnosperms have been placed in between dicots and monocots. However, we know that gymnosperms are actually primitive than monocots and dicots. So this is one of the main disadvantages of this classification system. The third disadvantage is the creation of monoclymity group. Monoclymity group separated many closely related species. For example, Caryophyllaceae, Chenopodiaceae, and Ilicibraceae. So these three families are very closely related families, but they have been separated by this classification system, as they have put this Caryophyllaceae in a separate group from Chenopodiaceae and Ilicibraceae, which are placed in monoclymity. And this Caryophyllaceae is present in polypetally. Okay, and many large families like Urticaceae, Taxifragaceae, and Euphorbiaceae. These three large families are regarded as unnatural assemblages as they are polyphyletic in nature. And what the classification system demands is that the group should be monophyletic in nature. That we'll be discussing in the next type of classification system, that is phylogenetic classification system, which came after this natural classification systems, and they addressed these demerits of this natural classification system. So this was about the meritus and demerits of Bentham and Hooker's classification. I hope you got the idea. I hope you got what these Bentham and Hooker's classification system is. So if you did understand this topic, kindly leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe to this channel. I hope to see you in the next video where we will be discussing about phylogenetic classification system, especially that of Takhtajan. Okay.
Remember, stay organized, unlike my sock drawer, which defies all known classification. If you like this video, hit that subscribe button. Peace out.